I never thought moving to a new city would change everything about my life and my heart. When I first came to Seattle, I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for stability, a job, and maybe a little peace. But instead, I found him, or maybe he found me. His name was Ethan Cole, and he became my roommate purely by accident. I'd posted an ad online, looking for someone to share rent with. And one ordinary Thursday evening, he showed up at the door. Messy brown hair, dimples he pretended not to know he had, and a smile that felt like warmth after a storm. "Hey," he said that first day, holding a cardboard box and a plant that looked like it hadn't been watered in weeks. "You must be Ava." I nodded, pretending I wasn't caught off guard by how effortlessly charming he looked in that plain gray t-shirt and jeans, sleeves slightly rolled, voice calm but teasing. "Yeah, come in. I hope you don't mind the mess," I said. The truth? The apartment wasn't messy at all. But I suddenly felt like my entire existence was. He moved in that weekend. We barely knew each other, but living with Ethan was strangely easy. He cooked breakfast. I made coffee. He left sticky notes on the fridge with bad jokes like, "Breakfast is ready, don't burn the toast this time." He'd laugh when I rolled my eyes, and I'd secretly smile when he wasn't looking. It was supposed to be casual, just two people sharing rent. But over time, it started to feel like something more, something that crept in quietly when I wasn't paying attention. The way he'd call out my name from across the apartment when he found a song he wanted me to hear. The way his voice softened when he said, "Good night." The way my heart reacted every single time. One rainy night, we were sitting on the couch, both of us half watching some Netflix show neither of us really cared about. The city lights shimmered through the window, and I remember thinking how still everything felt, except my heartbeat. He looked at me suddenly and said, "You ever think about what makes a place feel like home?" I didn't answer right away. His voice was quiet, thoughtful. I could tell he wasn't just talking about furniture or walls. "Maybe it's the people," I finally said. He smiled a little, eyes still on the TV. "Yeah, maybe." And that was it. Just a few words. But the silence that followed said more than either of us dared to. Weeks turned into months. We grew comfortable in each other's routines, morning coffee, late-night movies, random grocery trips where we argued about cereal flavors. But beneath the normalcy, something was shifting. Something we both felt but never said aloud. There were nights I'd hear him talking softly on the phone, laughing with someone. My chest would tighten, even though I had no right to feel jealous. We weren't together. We were just roommates. That's what I kept telling myself. One morning, I walked into the kitchen, half asleep, wearing one of his hoodies I'd borrowed and never returned. He was already there, leaning against the counter, pouring coffee. He looked up, his eyes catching mine. "You know that's mine, right?" he said, pointing to the hoodie. I shrugged. "Finders keepers." He laughed. "You're impossible. Yet you still make me coffee every morning," I said. He grinned, shaking his head. "Guess I'm a glutton for punishment." But then he added, softer this time, "Or maybe I just like having you around." My heart stuttered. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words got lost somewhere between my chest and my lips. So instead, I took my coffee, smiled, and walked away before he could see the look on my face. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words, "Maybe I just like having you around." Did he mean it? Was it just something people say to fill the air? I didn't know, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I turned over in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of rain tapping against the window. I thought about all the ways love sneaks up on you quietly, without permission, without warning. Maybe it had already found me. One evening, Ethan invited a few friends over for a small dinner. He cooked, which, by the way, he was annoyingly good at, and I helped set the table. His friends were funny, warm, the kind of people who made you feel welcome instantly. But throughout the night, I kept noticing little things, the way Ethan's hand brushed mine when he passed the wine bottle, the way his eyes lingered on me just a second longer than they should have. At one point, his friend Jake leaned over and said, "You two are cute together. How long have you been dating?" I nearly choked on my drink. Ethan laughed nervously. "Oh no, we're just roommates," he said quickly. Something in my chest tightened. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just roommates. But the word just felt heavier than it should have. After his friends left, the apartment went quiet again. I was washing dishes, trying to distract myself, when Ethan came over and took the plate from my hands. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" He looked at me for a moment, like he could see right through the lie. "You sure?" I laughed lightly. "Ethan, I'm fine. Go relax." But when he stepped closer, his voice dropped. "You didn't like that, did you?" I froze. "Didn't like what?" "When Jake said we were dating." My heart thudded hard against my ribs. "It's not a big deal." He studied my face for a long moment before saying, "It kind of felt like it was." I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words never came. He smiled faintly, almost sad. "Good night, Ava." And just like that, he turned and walked away. That night felt different. The distance between our rooms suddenly felt bigger. The silence louder. I wanted to knock on his door, to ask what he really meant. But fear, and maybe pride, kept me frozen. Over the next few days, we talked less. The easy laughter, the small jokes, they faded. Everything felt off. Until one Friday evening when I came home early from work. The apartment was quiet. Ethan's door was slightly open, and I could hear soft music playing. I hesitated for a second, then gently knocked. "Hey," I said, peeking inside. "You okay?" He looked up from his desk. His hair was messy, his jaw tight. "Yeah, just thinking." I stepped inside. "About?" He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "About how complicated feelings can get." My breath caught. "Feelings?" He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time, there was no joke in his eyes, no easy smile to hide behind. "Yeah," he said softly. "Like when you care about someone you're not supposed to." For a heartbeat, the room felt still. My pulse was loud in my ears. "Ethan," I whispered. But before I could say anything else, he stood up, shaking his head like he'd said too much. "Forget it," he said quickly. "I didn't mean." "Don't do that," I interrupted. He froze. "Do what?" "Say something real and then take it back." He met my eyes, and for a second, it felt like the whole world held its breath. But neither of us said another word. That night, I lay in bed wide awake, thinking about everything. His words, his tone, the way his voice had trembled. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing: nothing between us would ever be the same again. And maybe I didn't want it to be. The morning after that conversation felt heavier than usual. The rain had stopped, but the clouds outside still hung low, gray, and unmoving, kind of like the air between Ethan and me. We didn't talk about what happened the night before. He made coffee, I made toast. We moved around the kitchen like strangers who knew each other's habits too well. Every word that didn't come out seemed louder than the ones that did. When I finally sat at the table, he slid a mug toward me. "You've got an early shift, right?" "Yeah," I said, my voice quiet. "You?" He nodded, sipping his coffee. "Working from home." Silence again. The clinking of spoons, the hum of the refrigerator. Ordinary sounds that felt too sharp, too real. I wanted to ask him what he meant last night, when you care about someone you're not supposed to. But fear stopped me. What if I'd misread everything? What if he didn't mean me? So instead, I grabbed my bag, smiled like nothing was wrong, and said, "See you later." He looked at me for a second, eyes unreadable, and nodded. "Yeah, later." At work, I tried to distract myself. Answered emails, smiled at customers, laughed at jokes that weren't funny. But no matter what I did, I kept replaying his words. His voice. The way he looked at me. By the time I got home that evening, my head was a mess. The lights in the living room were dim, and I could hear faint music coming from his room again. Something acoustic, slow, the kind of song that makes you think about everything you're trying not to. I dropped my bag on the couch and took a deep breath. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I should just talk to him. But before I could decide, his door opened. He stepped out, barefoot, wearing a plain black t-shirt and those gray sweats he practically lived in. He froze when he saw me. "Hey, hey," I said softly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he gestured toward the kitchen. "You eaten yet?" I shook my head. "Good," he said, walking past me. Good, he said, walking past me. I made too much pasta. It was such a simple thing to say, but something about the way he said it, casual but careful, made my chest tighten. We sat at the counter, eating in near silence. The air was heavy but not cold, like we were both waiting for someone to say something real. After a few minutes, I finally did. "Ethan," I said, setting my fork down. "About last night." He froze, fork halfway to his mouth. "Yeah." I hesitated. "You said something about caring for someone you're not supposed to." He stared at me for a long second before exhaling. "You remember that, huh?" How could I forget? He gave a small, humorless laugh. "Yeah, I shouldn't have said that." "Why not?" "Because it complicates things," he said quietly. I swallowed hard. "And do you always avoid things that are complicated?" He looked up at me, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something raw, honest, unguarded. Then he said softly, only when it could ruin something good. The words hit deeper than I expected. Because the truth was, he was right. Whatever this was between us, the jokes, the easy comfort, the late-night talks, it was good. Too good. And maybe neither of us wanted to risk it. So I nodded, pretending to understand, even though every part of me wished he'd said something different. The days that followed were quieter. We talked, but it was surface level, weather, errands, grocery lists. No late-night movies, no playful banter. It felt like we were both trying to protect something fragile. Until one night, when the city lights were soft and golden through the blinds, and I heard a knock on my door. "Ava?" It was Ethan. His voice sounded hesitant. "Yeah," I said, sitting up in bed. "Can I come in?" I hesitated for a second, then said, "Yeah." He stepped inside, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sorry if I woke you." "You didn't." He looked around awkwardly, then met my eyes. I don't know how to say this without sounding stupid." I frowned slightly. "Just say it." He took a deep breath. "I don't want things to feel weird between us." "They don't," I lied. He smiled faintly. "You're a bad liar." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm trying." He took a step closer, his expression soft. "Ava, I meant what I said that night. I didn't say it to confuse you. I just didn't know what to do with it." "With what?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "With the way I feel about you." Time stopped. My heart raced, my breath caught. I didn't say anything I couldn't. I just stared at him, trying to make sure I wasn't dreaming. He continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've been in my head for weeks. I wake up thinking about you. I notice every stupid little thing you do, like the way you tap your mug before you take the first sip of coffee, or how you hum when you're focused. And I keep telling myself it's nothing, but it's not nothing. It's everything." I felt the air leave my lungs. "Ethan." He shook his head quickly. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Because pretending I don't care about you is getting harder every day." For a second, I didn't know whether to cry or smile or run. My chest felt full, too full. I stood slowly, crossing the small distance between us. "Why didn't you just tell me sooner?" He gave a small, helpless laugh. "Because I didn't want to mess this up. I didn't want to lose you." "You wouldn't have," I whispered. He looked at me like he was trying to believe it. "You sure about that?" Instead of answering, I reached up and touched his cheek. His breath hitched, and my hand trembled. "I've been scared too," I admitted. Scared of what it would mean if this was real. He leaned in just a little, his forehead resting against mine. "It is real." For a moment, there was nothing else, no noise, no distance, just us. And then, as if realizing how close we were, he stepped back slightly, his voice low. "I should let you sleep." "Ethan," I said softly. "Don't." He looked at me, torn, uncertain. "I'm not asking for anything crazy," I whispered. "Just stay a little longer." He hesitated only for a second before sitting on the edge of my bed. I slid closer, resting my head on his shoulder. We didn't speak. We didn't have to. His heartbeat was steady beneath my ear, and I wondered how long it had been waiting for mine to match its rhythm. When he finally left that night, I couldn't stop smiling, and yet my heart felt terrified. Because when something feels that right, you start wondering when it'll all fall apart. The next morning, everything looked the same kitchen, the same coffee, the same jokes, but it didn't feel the same. Ethan was humming while flipping pancakes, and I realized I was watching him differently now, not as my roommate, not even as my friend, but as someone I'd somehow fallen in love with. He caught me staring. "What?" he asked, grinning. "Nothing," I said, hiding a smile. He raised an eyebrow. "Liar." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm trying." It became our thing, the repetition of words that meant more each time. That evening, I met him on the balcony. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the kind of sunset that makes you forget everything else. He handed me a glass of wine. "You ever think about how weird it is that we ended up here?" "All the time," I said. He smiled. If someone had told me I'd fall for my roommate, I would have laughed. I laughed too, but my chest felt warm. "And now?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Now, I can't imagine home without you." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just leaned closer, resting my hand over his. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of meaning, of promise, of something beautiful that neither of us had expected. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared. It's strange how quickly your heart adjusts to a new rhythm once you've let someone in. The morning after our balcony talk, everything between Ethan and me felt softer, lighter, but charged. Every glance lingered a little too long. Every word meant a little more. We didn't call it anything. We didn't need to. It was in the way he handed me my coffee, his fingers brushing mine. It was in the way I caught him looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. It was in the quiet, the kind of quiet that feels comfortable, like home. A week later, we went grocery shopping together. Something so ordinary, yet it felt like a date neither of us admitted to. We argued about ice cream flavors, like always. He said chocolate chip cookie dough was superior. I said strawberry. He put both in the cart, smirking. "Compromise," he said. I laughed, shaking my head. "You're ridiculous." "Maybe, but you still like me," he said. I rolled my eyes, pretending not to blush. "Keep telling yourself that." But we both knew the truth. I did like him. Maybe more than I should. When we got home, we were putting groceries away when the bag ripped, sending apples rolling across the floor. "Smooth," he teased. I knelt to pick them up, and so did he. Our hands met on the last apple. We froze. For a second, everything felt still. The air, the sound, the world. His hand stayed over mine, his skin warm, his breath shallow. He looked at me, really looked, and I felt that familiar pull, that gravity that kept drawing me closer no matter how hard I tried to stay grounded. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "You drive me crazy." I swallowed hard. "Good crazy or bad crazy?" He smiled. "The kind that makes you forget what you were doing." I forgot too. We didn't kiss that day, but we both knew it was getting harder not to. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. About the way he looked at me, like he was memorizing something. Love doesn't always come crashing in. Sometimes it's quiet. It builds with every small moment until you realize it's been there all along. And that realization terrified me. A few days later, Ethan had to travel for work. Just 2 days. I told myself it was nothing, but when he left that morning, the apartment felt empty in a way that caught me off guard. His coffee mug sat by the sink. His jacket still hung by the door. It was ridiculous. It was just 2 days, but everything felt too still without him. That night, I found myself scrolling through my phone, staring at our last text. "Ethan, made it safe. Don't burn the apartment down." Me, "No promises." I smiled at the screen, typing a reply, then deleting it. I didn't want to seem too attached. But when he called later that night, my heart jumped. "Hey," he said, his voice through the speaker soft and familiar. "You sound quiet." "Just tired," I lied. He didn't buy it. "Miss me already?" I laughed lightly. "Don't flatter yourself." He chuckled. "Too late." There was a pause, the comfortable kind that always seemed to stretch between us. Then he said quietly, "It's weird not having you around." My chest tightened. "Yeah," I whispered. "Weird." After we hung up, I stared at the ceiling for a long time, realizing that weird was just another word for lonely. When he came back, it was raining again, Seattle's constant reminder that nothing stays clear for long. I opened the door before he could even knock. He was soaked, hair messy, suitcase dripping. "Hey," he said, smiling that tired, boyish smile. "Miss me?" "Maybe," I said, stepping aside. He grinned. "Liar." He dropped his bag and pulled off his jacket, shaking his hair like a wet dog. I laughed, tossing him a towel. "Here. You're ruining the floor." He caught it, smirking. "You care about the floor more than me, huh?" "Depends," I said. "The floor doesn't steal my blankets at night." He raised an eyebrow. "You could always share." My heart skipped. "Don't push your luck, Cole." He laughed, and everything felt right again. That night, we watched a movie. He stretched out on the couch. I curled up beside him with a blanket. Halfway through, I felt his arm brush against mine. He didn't move it. Neither did I. Eventually, my head found his shoulder. His hand rested lightly against my arm, thumb tracing slow circles. It was the smallest thing, but it set something on fire inside me. Halfway through the movie, I looked up at him. He was already looking at me. We didn't speak. Didn't need to. And then, finally, he leaned in. The kiss wasn't planned. It wasn't perfect. But it felt like something we'd both been waiting for, a confession made without words. It was soft at first, hesitant, like he was afraid I'd disappear. Then deeper, warmer. When we finally pulled away, his forehead rested against mine. "Wow," he whispered. "Yeah," I said breathlessly. "Wow." He smiled. "I've wanted to do that for way too long." "Guess we're both bad at waiting," I said. "Guess so," he murmured. After that night, everything changed, not in a dramatic, movie kind of way, but in the small details. He'd reach for my hand while we cooked. I'd steal his hoodies just to see him pretend to be mad. He'd text me from the next room just to say, "Miss you." It was quiet, domestic, sweet, the kind of love that sneaks into your daily routine and stays there. We didn't tell anyone. It wasn't about that. It was ours, private, fragile, and real. But love, even the gentle kind, comes with its own shadows. One evening, I came home early and found him sitting on the couch, looking at his phone, expression unreadable. "Hey," I said. "Everything okay?" He looked up, startled. Yeah, fine." But his tone was off. I sat beside him. "Ethan?" He sighed, setting the phone down. "It's just, my ex texted me." Something cold moved through my chest. "Oh, yeah," he said quietly. "She saw a photo I posted. Just the apartment, nothing of us, and she said it reminded her of when we lived together." I tried to sound casual. "And? Anne?" "I don't know. It just threw me off, I guess." I nodded, forcing a smile. "That's normal. It's fine." He studied me. "You sure?" "Totally." But inside, something hurt. Not because he did anything wrong, he didn't, but because I realized how fragile happiness can feel when you finally have it. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the city lights blur through the rain. I thought about how easy it is to lose yourself in someone, and how terrifying it is to know they could walk away at any moment. When Ethan found me there, he didn't say anything at first. He just walked up behind me and wrapped his arms around my shoulders. "Couldn't sleep," he murmured. "Just thinking," I said. "About?" "Everything," I whispered. "Us." He tightened his hold. "Hey, look at me." I turned to face him. His eyes were soft, steady. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. I wanted to believe him. So I did. The next morning, he made pancakes again. I teased him about burning one, and he laughed, flipping it perfectly. "You worried for nothing," he said, sliding the plate toward me. "Maybe," I said, smiling. "Definitely," he replied, brushing a crumb from my lip before leaning in for a kiss. And in that moment, I knew whatever came next, I'd already fallen too deep to turn back. For the next few weeks, everything felt like a dream I didn't want to wake up from. Ethan and I had fallen into a rhythm, coffee in the mornings, teasing in the afternoons, and quiet conversations at night that stretched until sunrise. There was laughter. There were lazy Sundays with messy hair and half-eaten pancakes. There were inside jokes and soft kisses, and the kind of warmth that made even rainy Seattle mornings feel like sunlight. It was the kind of love that didn't demand attention. It just existed, quietly and completely. One Friday evening, we went out with some of Ethan's friends, people I'd only met a couple of times. We were sitting at a rooftop bar, city lights glowing in the distance, music humming in the background. Ethan's arm rested around the back of my chair, his thumb brushing lightly against my shoulder. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it said everything. So, one of his friends asked, "How long have you two been together?" I froze slightly, glancing at Ethan. He smiled, that small, careful smile. "We're figuring it out," he said. The words shouldn't have stung. They were honest. But they did. Figuring it out. I forced a polite laugh, pretending it didn't bother me. But somewhere deep down, I wanted him to say something else. Something like "she's mine" or "we're together." It was selfish. I knew that. But love makes you crave clarity. The rest of the night passed in a blur of laughter and half-finished drinks. When we finally got home, the silence between us felt heavier than usual. "You okay?" he asked softly as he closed the door behind us. "Yeah," I said, too quickly. He studied me, frowning a little. "You sure?" "I'm fine, Ethan." He nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't believe me. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't about what he said. It was about what he didn't. He kissed me goodnight like nothing was wrong, and part of me wished I could just let it go. But another part, the one that had fallen too deeply, too fast, couldn't stop wondering if maybe I cared more than he did. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen, making coffee. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much either. "Morning," I said quietly. "Morning." We went through our usual motions, mugs, milk, sugar, but it felt mechanical, rehearsed. Finally, he broke the silence. "You were quiet last night." "Just tired." "Ava," his voice was gentle but firm. "Don't do that thing where you shut me out." I met his eyes. "And don't do that thing where you act like nothing's wrong." He sighed, setting the mug down. "Okay, let's talk about it." I hesitated. "When your friend asked about us, why couldn't you just say we're together?" He blinked, caught off guard. "Because I didn't know if you wanted that label yet." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "We live together. We kiss. We sleep next to each other. What are we if not together?" He ran a hand through his hair. "We are." I didn't want to make you uncomfortable." I laughed, but it wasn't funny. "Uncomfortable?" "Ethan, the only thing that makes me uncomfortable is not knowing where I stand." He looked at me, really looked at me, and something in his expression softened. "You stand right here," he said quietly. "With me." For a moment, that was enough. But somewhere deep down, I still felt the crack, small, invisible, but real. Days passed. Things went back to normal. At least on the surface. We laughed. We cooked. We touched. But sometimes I caught him staring at his phone, lost in thought. One evening, he said he had to stay late at work. I didn't think much of it until I scrolled through social media and saw a photo someone had posted. Ethan at a bar downtown with a few coworkers, including her, his ex. They were smiling. Close. Too close. The caption read, "Old crew back together again." My stomach dropped. I told myself not to overthink it. I told myself it didn't mean anything. But all those reassurances fell apart when he came home later that night, smelling faintly of whiskey and rain. "Hey," he said, kicking off his shoes. "You're still up." I tried to sound casual. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." He sat beside me on the couch. "Rough day." I turned to face him. "You saw your ex tonight." His expression froze. "You saw that photo." "Yeah," I said quietly. "You didn't mention she'd be there." "It was last minute." I didn't think it mattered. It mattered to me. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Ava, nothing happened. She was just there. That's all." "I know," I said. I wish you'd told me." He looked at me, guilt flickering in his eyes. "You're right. I should've." Silence filled the room, thick, uncomfortable. He reached for my hand. "You trust me, right?" I hesitated. "I want to." That was the truth. For the first time since we'd gotten together, we slept with our backs turned. The space between us felt wider than the bed. I hated it. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up, a note on the counter. Had to leave early. Let's talk later. E. I crumpled it without reading it twice. That day dragged on. Every sound felt louder. Every thought heavier. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to clear my head. So I went for a walk. It was raining, of course it was, but I didn't care. I just kept walking until the city blurred into mist. I ended up at the coffee shop where Ethan and I first met. The same one where he spilled his drink and apologized 100 times. It felt like a lifetime ago. I sat there for a while, watching the rain streak down the window, wondering when love had gotten so complicated. When I got home, Ethan was waiting at the door. He looked worried, like he'd been pacing for hours. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice thick with relief and frustration. "I just needed space," I said quietly. He exhaled. "You could have texted. You could have told me about last night." He fell silent. Then, after a long pause, said, "You're right. I screwed up." I stared at him, heart aching. "Why does it feel like you're halfway in and halfway out, Ethan?" He stepped closer. "Because I'm scared." That stopped me. "Scared of what?" "Of losing you," he said softly. "Of messing this up. Of wanting something so much that it hurts." My eyes burned. "You already have me." "I know," he whispered. "That's what terrifies me." I didn't know what to say. So instead, I closed the distance between us and kissed him, not gently, but desperately. Because sometimes love isn't calm. Sometimes it's raw and messy and full of fear. He kissed me back, like he'd been waiting for that moment all day. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "For everything. For not saying what you needed to hear." "I don't need perfect words," I whispered. "Just honesty." "You have it," he said. "You have all of me." And for the first time in days, I believed him. Later that night, we sat together on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, eating takeout straight from the boxes. It was simple. Real. Us. Ethan reached out, brushing a noodle off my lip. "You're terrible with chopsticks." I laughed. "And you're terrible with apologies." He grinned. "Fair." Then he got quiet, his tone soft. "For what it's worth, when my friend asked what we were that night, I should have said you're mine." I froze, meeting his eyes. He continued, "Because you are. And I'm yours. No figuring out needed." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. "Took you long enough to say it." He smiled, pulling me closer. I was waiting for the right time. "And this is it?" He kissed me once, slow and certain. "Yeah, this is it." That night, as I drifted off against his chest, I thought about how love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing someone even when it's hard. Even when you're scared. Even when you don't have all the answers. Because the right person doesn't make life easier. They make it worth it. And as Ethan's heartbeat steadied under my ear, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. It's strange how love can make time feel different. Some days move too fast, slipping through your fingers before you even realize they've gone. And some days, the ones you want to hold on to feel like they could last forever. The next few weeks were like that. Ethan and I were finally in sync, no games, no doubts, just us. We cooked together, danced in the kitchen when songs we loved came on, left sweet notes on the fridge before work. It was the kind of love that didn't shout. It just existed quietly in all the little moments. But sometimes, even when things are perfect, life tests you. It started with an email. Ethan had been applying for a big promotion, one that could move him across the country for a year. He hadn't told me because he didn't think he'd get it. But now he had. New York. I remember staring at the screen as he told me, my chest tightening. "That's amazing," I said, trying to sound happy for him. He smiled, though his eyes looked unsure. "It's everything I've been working for. But I don't know if I can go." "Of course you should," I said. "You've earned it." He frowned. "Ava, that's not what I meant." "What did you mean then?" He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I mean, I can't imagine leaving you." For a second, I didn't breathe. It was everything I wanted to hear, and yet it scared me. "Ethan," I said softly, "you can't give up your dream because of me." He stepped closer. "You are my dream." The words hit me like a wave, beautiful, but heavy. "Don't say that," I whispered. "Because if you stay and regret it later, I'll be the reason." He looked at me, searching my face. You think I'd regret being with you? I think you'd regret not trying, I said. And that's worse. We stood there in silence, the kind that feels like goodbye but isn't yet. The days that followed were hard. We didn't talk about New York, but it lingered between us, in every kiss, every late-night laugh, every quiet moment that should have felt normal. One night, I woke up and found him sitting on the balcony, staring at the city lights. You can't sleep either? I asked, wrapping my blanket around me. He shook his head. Just thinking. About leaving? He smiled sadly. About how leaving doesn't feel right, but staying feels selfish. I sat beside him, our knees touching. Ethan, I said softly, love isn't about keeping someone close. It's about letting them become who they're meant to be, even if it scares you. He looked at me like he wanted to argue, but instead, he just nodded. We sat there for a long time, saying nothing, watching the night fade into morning. A week later, he packed his bags. I helped him fold shirts, pretending not to notice the ache in my chest. He kept glancing at me like he wanted to memorize my face. When it was time to go, he stood by the door, holding his keys. I'll call you every day, he said. I smiled. You better. He hesitated, then pulled me in one of those hugs that feel like they're trying to last forever. When he finally let go, he whispered, "Don't forget me." As if I could, I said. And just like that, he was gone. The apartment felt empty after that. Too quiet. Too still. But it wasn't sad quiet, more like peaceful. Like love had left its mark, and that was enough for now. I went back to my routines, coffee in the mornings, candles at night. And sometimes, when the wind came through the window just right, I swore I could still hear his laugh echoing through the room. Months passed. He called. He texted. We talked about everything and nothing, about how his job was going, about the city, about how much we missed each other. And then one night, as I was brushing my hair, I got a message. Just 2 words, look outside. I frowned, walked to the window, and froze. Ethan was standing there in the rain, holding a suitcase. I ran downstairs barefoot, heart pounding, and before I could even speak, he said, I came home. I stared at him, drenched and shivering. You left New York for this? For you, he said. Turns out, my dream wasn't a job. It was a person. I laughed through tears, shaking my head. You're crazy. Completely, he said. But so are you for loving me back. Then he kissed me, rain and all, and everything fell back into place. Later that night, curled up beside him again, I realized something. Love isn't about constant fireworks or grand gestures. It's about showing up again and again, even when life pulls you apart. Because when it's real, love always finds its way home. And sometimes, it even knocks on your door in the middle of the rain. So, if you've been listening till the end, thank you for being part of this journey. If the roommate's confession touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Well Lovely Tales, and visit the channel regularly for more beautiful, romantic stories that remind you love is always worth believing in. Until next time, this was Ava's story. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of yours too.